Good morning, dear students. Today I am sending you few question answers from the chapter Life Processes. Very simple question answers. You can read them and learn them by heart. These all things you have learned in your previous classes also. The term life process means all the activities that we do in order to stay alive and healthy. We breathe, we move, we eat food, the food is digested in our body. So whatever your body does in order to stay alive and be healthy is life process. While you will go through these question answers, this is a life process nutrition studied in these questions. Now nutrition means whatever you eat that helps you to grow and develop. Okay, so when you talk about the type of individuals or life organisms, there are plants, there are animals. When you talk about plants, they do the process of photosynthesis in order to manufacture their food, and so they are the producers of our system. Whereas all the animals directly or indirectly depend on plants for their food, so they are consumers, and they are classified as herbivores, carnivores, omnivores. You very well know the definitions of all these terms. So here are few different types of nutrition that animals show in order to survive. You will learn here Holozoic mode, you will learn saprophytic nutrition, you will learn parasitic nutrition. These all terms you have already learned in your previous classes, and in case you have any doubt or a query, you can please call me and let me know. Thank you. In our last class we studied about the process of photosynthesis, and today we are going to deal with the structure or the part of the plant that is directly related to photosynthesis, that is leaf. Now we are going to see today the external structure as well as the internal structure of leaf. The external structure you already have learned in your lower classes, and internal structure we will see in detail. The second figure which is given below is the transverse section of leaf. That is, we are going to see here the inner view of leaf. So when you see the inner view, there is a pink color upper epidermis, and at the lower side also you will see a pink color, that is the lower epidermis. The upper epidermis is a continuous one, and it is covered with a very slippery material, that is cuticle. You all have seen that upper surface of leaf is very smooth. It is smooth because of deposition of cuticle. Then just below the upper epidermis are the cells, long cells, which is palisade parenchyma, and below the palisade parenchyma are the round cells which are spongy parenchyma. Now this palisade parenchyma and spongy parenchyma together they are known as mesophyll of a leaf, and these are the cells that contain chloroplast, that is they have chlorophyll. And so mesophyll is the region of the leaf that does photosynthesis. Just below the spongy parenchyma is again the pink color layer, which is lower epidermis. It is not continuous and it has small pores, that is stomata. I want all of you to look at the leaves. You are having several plants at your home. Just look at a leaf. You will see that upper surface is very soft and smooth, whereas when you will see the lower surface, it is the rough one and it is not shining. So that clearly depicts that the lower surface has stomata. What are stomata? What is their function? That is very well known to you because you have already learned them in your lower classes. Okay. The first part, that is tongue, helps you to detect the food that you take in your mouth, and it has got the tasting buds on the upper surface of the tongue. The upper surface of the tongue is rough. It is because of presence of papilla, and into those papillas are the taste buds that help you to detect the different type of taste of material ingested. Tongue also helps in mixing the food with saliva. It keeps on rolling when you chew the food or eat the food, and it mixes the food well with saliva so that the food material that you have ingested get completely soft and wet. Now we'll discuss the first part of alimentary canal, that is mouth. You very well know that mouth is the opening for your body, and you always eat your food through mouth. It is bounded by two movable lips and is meant for ingestion. Your mouth leads to buccal cavity or oral cavity, and the buccal cavity or the oral cavity has three parts, that is tongue, teeth and salivary gland. The saliva is sticky because of presence of mucus in it, and that mucus help in making the food material soft so that you can swallow it well without any difficulty. Besides that, saliva has a very important enzyme that is known as salivary amylase or patylene, and that enzyme starts the digestion of starch in your mouth. The starch changes to maltose, which is a sweet sugar. Besides that, saliva has a very important enzyme that is known as salivary amylase or patylene, and that enzyme starts the digestion of starch in your mouth. The starch changes to maltose, which is a sweet sugar. Saliva also has one more enzyme, that is lysoenzyme, that helps in killing the germs if they enter in your mouth through the food. The same lysoenzyme is present in your eyes also in tears. So if any unwanted particle enter your eye, it is always coming out from the eye in the dead form. So these are the three components of saliva: mucus, lysoenzyme and salivary amylase. The last part is salivary glands. There are three pair of salivary glands in your mouth that releases a sticky fluid which is called saliva. Now the next part, that is teeth. We have four different type of teeth in our mouth: incisors, canines, premolars and molars, that help you to cut, tear, chew and grind the food. So this type of dentition is known as heterodont dentition. In our last class we have started the digestive system in man, and I have told you about the digestion in the buccal cavity, that is mouth, salivary glands and tongue. These three organs are playing their role, and the food is broken down into smaller pieces and it turns into bolus. In today's class we learn about esophagus and stomach. The movement of food is brought about by the contraction of muscles of esophagus, which is a muscular tube, and such type of movement is known as peristalsis. Esophagus is a long tube that extends from buccal cavity to stomach, and its main function is that it transports the bolus to stomach where it is stored. Our next part is stomach, which is divided into three parts, that is cardiac, fundic and pyloric, and it releases gastric juice. Inside the stomach, the food is mixed with gastric juice and it turns into a semi-solid material that is known as chyme. I am providing you the details in the notes. Kindly read them. Whatever you swallow is bolus. When this bolus reaches stomach, it gets mixed up with the gastric juice that is released in stomach and it turns into a semi-solid material that is known as chyme. So this chyme will now enter the next part of our digestive system, that is small intestine, and we will learn about the small intestine in tomorrow's class. That's all for the day. Thank you. The gastric juice has three main components, that is hydrochloric acid, pepsinogen enzyme which is a proenzyme, and the third component is mucus. Now let us see the functions of each one of them. The hydrochloric acid kill the germs if they enter with the food that you have ingested. The second important function of hydrochloric acid is that it activates the proenzyme or inactive enzyme pepsinogen and turns it into active enzyme, that is pepsin. The pepsin further starts the digestion of protein in your stomach. Last is the mucus. Since the HCl is very acidic and it can damage the inner cells of the stomach, so mucus cover the inner cells or inner lining of stomach and it protect it from the action of HCl. From this heading, two questions were asked during the CBSE exam of this year. One was, what is the role of hydrochloric acid, and other is, how is the inner lining of stomach protected from the action of HCl. Your small intestine is divided into three parts, that is duodenum, jejunum and ileum. We are going to study about duodenum. It is the most important part where the digestion is completed. Now the duodenum is receiving the secretion of all the glands, that is from liver it receives bile, from pancreas it receives pancreatic juice, from intestine it receives the intestinal juice. All these secretion mix with the chyme that enters the small intestine, and all the complex material is converted into simple, that is carbohydrate changes to glucose, protein changes to amino acids, fats are changing to fatty acids and glycerol. Till the time the end products are not formed, the process of digestion continues. The notes that are being shared above give you the role of bile, pancreatic juice and the intestinal juice. You go through them, and if you have any query or any doubt, you can call and find out. So till today we have learned that carbohydrate digestion started in mouth, then it got stopped in stomach, and then it got again started in your small intestine duodenum part, and finally the carbohydrate digestion was finished in duodenum only. The protein digestion started in stomach, and then in small intestine duodenum part it was converted to simplest form, that is amino acid. But the fat digestion started in duodenum only and it got finished also in duodenum, that is the end products fatty acids and glycerol were formed. That's all for the day. Tomorrow we learn about the other parts of small intestine, that is jejunum, ileum and large intestine. Thank you. Have a nice day. In our last class we started with the digestion in small intestine. We have learned that small intestine is divided into three parts: duodenum, jejunum and ileum. In duodenum, the digestion of all the components, that is carbohydrate, fats and protein, was completed. Now today we are going to learn about the next two parts, that is jejunum and ileum. In jejunum and ileum, the digestive food, that is glucose, amino acids, fatty acids, glycerol, their absorption occurs, and after absorption it goes to blood. Now the blood circulates in the entire body and transfer all these components to the various parts where it is assimilated. For active absorption to occur, the jejunum and ileum, especially the ileum, is provided with a specific structures which are finger-like projections, and these finger-like projections are called as villi, and these villi are basically meant for increasing the surface area so that the better absorption of digestive food can take place. Now the image given above give you the idea about the structure of villi. You can see that they are finger-like projections. They are having a large surface area. They are having a very rich supply of blood, and they are supplied with lot of villi on their outer surface. You can see the epithelial cell. The epithelial cells, which is forming the outer layer of the villi, they give out more hair-like structures which are known as microvilli. So villi and microvilli together increases the surface area. Now mind it, children, wherever in your body the exchange of material will occur, that part is always going to have three properties. They are going to have thin and delicate membrane, then they will be having the rich supply of blood, and third, they are going to have a large surface area. Since this villi is having all these three properties, that is why the digestive food absorption is done in the part ileum. So till today we have learned that carbohydrate digestion started in mouth, then it got stopped in stomach, and then it got again started in your small intestine duodenum part, and finally the carbohydrate digestion was finished in duodenum only. The protein digestion started in stomach, and then in small intestine duodenum part it was converted to simplest form, that is amino acid. But the fat digestion started in duodenum only, and it got finished also in duodenum, that is the end products, fatty acids and glycerol were formed. That's all for the day. Tomorrow we learn about the other parts of small intestine, that is jejunum, ileum and large intestine. Thank you. Have a nice day. Now the next part of your digestive system is the large intestine, which is divided into three parts: cecum, colon and rectum. Anus is the part of rectum. Now the major function of the large intestine is that it absorbs the water from undigested food. After digestion and absorption is completed in small intestine, all the undigested material gets into large intestine, and from that undigested material the water is absorbed. So they also have villi. Now here many times the question comes, what is the role of villi in small intestine and what is the role of villi in large intestine? So you can clearly identify or indicate that in small intestine the villi are present for absorption of digestive food, whereas in large intestine the villi are basically meant for absorption of water from the undigested food. Now the undigested food finally removes from the body through anus. The anus bears the sphincter, that is known as anal sphincter. A last topic for today is the sphincter. Now in your complete digestive tract there are many ducts. You have learned about esophagus, then you have learned about small intestine, you have learned about your stomach. Now every part is having the sphincter. Sphincter is basically a group of muscle that will open or close the duct. So esophagus is provided with the sphincter, and the name is given esophageal sphincter. So what will be the role of esophageal sphincter? That it will regulate the opening and closing of esophagus so that food can enter the stomach. The next sphincter is present at the end part of stomach, which is the pyloric stomach. So again the name of the sphincter is pyloric sphincter, and it will regulate the flow of food in the form of chyme to small intestine. Next and the last sphincter is the anal sphincter, which is present at anus, and this will regulate the movement of fecal matter out of the body. Now all these sphincters are having the one important property, that they do not allow the backflow of material. Once the material had moved from one part to another part, it will never return back to the previous part. This is all for the day today. In today's class, we are going to start our next topic of the chapter life processes, that is breathing and respiration. You have already learned these terms in your previous classes also. Now let us have a brief discussion about breathing. Breathing, a very simple process where you take in oxygen and you give out carbon dioxide. That is, inhalation of O2 and exhalation of CO2 is called breathing. Now respiration. Respiration is a process where the food is oxidized and energy is released. In our topic digestion, we have learned that the food was converted from complex to simple. Now from that simple food, the next step is to derive the energy which we will be utilizing for our day-to-day activities, and respiration is the only way by which you can derive the energy. Every living organism respires, whether it's a plant or a bacteria or any individual, because respiration is the only way by which you can get energy. Now the image shared above give you the details about differences between breathing and respiration. You can clearly see that breathing is just a physical process where you take in oxygen and you give out carbon dioxide. No energy will be released, no enzymes are involved, whereas in case of respiration, the food is oxidized, energy is released, enzymes are involved. So these are the most common differences between the two processes, that is breathing and respiration. For respiration to occur, breathing is very important, because through breathing only the oxygen reaches on the inner part of the body and the food can be oxidized. The next difference chart give you the details about the types of respiration. That is, two types are there: aerobic respiration and non-aerobic or anaerobic respiration. Now aerobic respiration is the respiration that occur in presence of oxygen. The anaerobic is the one which occurs in absence of oxygen. So all the animals show basically aerobic, and bacteria and fungi are the organisms that show the anaerobic respiration. The respiratory substrate, which is glucose, is completely oxidized during aerobic respiration, whereas in anaerobic respiration it is partially oxidized and gives the ethyl alcohol. More energy is released in aerobic, then less energy is released in anaerobic. So these are the few common points of differences that you have previously also learned. Now let us see the next topic, that is respiration in plants. In your 9th standard you have already learned that plants are stationary, they cannot move from one place to another, and so in them the mechanisms are very simple. They do not have the organ grade system, they are having simple organs for various purpose. So for respiration also, the plants are having the structures which help them to exchange the gases and brings about the respiration. For example, in roots, the root hairs are there which are fine thread like structures, and they help in gaseous exchange. On leaves, the stomata are there that helps in gaseous exchange, whereas on a bark of a tree which is very hard and woody, you will find lens-like openings. These lens-like openings are called lenticels, and these lenticels allow the exchange of gases between the inner living cells and the environment. Only the simple structures are there that helps in exchange of gases, which generally occur by the process of diffusion. Good morning. In our yesterday's class, we started with the new life process, that is breathing and respiration. We discussed the definition. After that, the differences between the breathing respiration and aerobic and anaerobic respiration. And we have studied about the respiration in plants. Today we are going to study the respiration in aquatic animals. The note given above give you the detail about the respiration in fish, in aquatic animal, that is fish. Fish use gills for their respiration. They use the oxygen which is dissolved in water, and the oxygen is present in small amount as compared to the terrestrial organisms or the oxygen present in air. That is why the breathing rates of aquatic animal is much more higher than the terrestrial animal. If you have aquarium at your home, just sit in front of aquarium for 1 minute, select one of the fish and see how many times the fish opens its mouth. Then you sit and count your number of breath for 1 minute. You will find that the number of times the fish open its mouth is higher than the number of breath you take in 1 minute. This is because of the same reason that oxygen is present in dissolved form in water and its amount is less. That is why the breathing rate in aquatic organism is higher. Our next topic for today is respiratory system in man. We are going to study the parts of the respiratory system in man today. Your respiratory system is present in the chest part or thoracic region, and it includes the parts, that is nostrils, nasal passage, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, bronchioles and alveoli. The bronchi, bronchioles and alveoli are enclosed in a membrane and form the lungs. We have a pair of lungs present in a chest. That's all for the day. Tomorrow's class we are going to study detail about these parts and their function.